On April 1, 2026, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, DISCUS, published its statistics on exports and imports for 2025. However, the data is less detailed than the corresponding statistics provided by the Scotch Whisky Association, SWA. The export value of American whiskey declined by 18.7% during 2025, representing a significant drop compared to Scotch whisky, where the decrease was only 0.6%. DISCUS categorizes American whiskey into two main groups, bourbon and other whiskey, as well as by bottled and bulk exports. Other whiskey consists of Tennessee whiskey, whiskey for blending, rye and malt whiskey. Other whiskey accounted for approximately 72% of total export value, while bourbon represented 28%. At the same time, bulk exports made up nearly 22% of the total export value. In volume terms, the decline was smaller but still notable, at close to 11%. By comparison, Scotch whisky export volumes decreased by just over 4%. The underlying causes are multiple and vary by market. This chart presents a comparison of average prices across the different categories, expressed in US dollars, per liter of pure alcohol LPA. For bourbon, the bottled price is nearly 5 times higher than bulk. For other American whiskey, the corresponding ratio is significantly lower, at approximately 2 times. On the right-hand side, comparable average prices for Scotch whisky are shown, broken down into malt whisky, single malt, blended malt, and bulk. Blended whisky, bottled and bulk. And grain whisky. It is particularly noteworthy that US other whisky in bulk commands a significantly higher average price than Scotch whisky in bulk, regardless of category. These charts illustrate the development in both volume and value for bourbon and other American whiskey over the period 2020-2025. The latter category has shown stronger positive growth than bourbon, with the exception of 2025. These charts show whiskey's share of total US spirits exports. The trend is clear: whiskey's share is declining over time, while vodka is gaining share, particularly in volume, but also in value. The largest export markets and their development over time. Ranked by export volume in 2025. Australia was the largest export market, with a relatively stable development over time. In 2025, approximately 33% was exported in bulk, and the average price amounted to $22.40 per proof gallon. Spain was the second largest export market, where exports are largely dominated by bourbon. Approximately 90% consisted of bourbon in bulk. The Netherlands serves as a key hub for whiskey, and exports to this market have increased significantly over time. This growth has been driven primarily by bulk shipments of other American whiskey. It is worth noting, however, that the value of bulk exports declined by half in 2025, while volumes remained largely in line with 2024. To account for the exceptionally high export levels in 2023, the value scale in the chart has been adjusted. Whiskey hubs and their import and export flows will be analyzed in more detail in a later presentation. Japan, the fourth largest export market, also receives the majority of its imports in bulk. In this case, however, the bulk shipments consist primarily of bourbon. Exports to the United Kingdom have remained stable over time and are dominated by other American whiskey. The share of bulk is low. Brazil is the sixth largest export market and has shown positive growth. Here too, exports are dominated by other whiskey, but the average price is approximately half of that achieved in the UK market. Exports to Germany declined sharply in 2025, falling by approximately 50% in volume and 62% in value. More than half of the exports are in bulk. The decline is primarily driven by a significant drop in bottled other American whiskey, which decreased by around 2/3 in both volume and value. Exports to France have also declined, although less dramatically. As in Germany, exports are predominantly composed of bottled other American whiskey. Exports to the United Arab Emirates, the ninth largest export market, consist almost entirely of bottled other American whiskey, achieving relatively high price levels. Exports to Mexico have shown positive growth over time, with approximately half of the volumes shipped in bulk. There has been significant media attention surrounding exports of American whiskey to Canada, including images showing store shelves where American whiskey has been removed. In 2025, Canada was only the 13th largest export market by volume. To better illustrate the development, the scale in the chart has been adjusted. Exports declined by 44% in volume and 54% in value. At the same time, the average price is significantly higher than in other markets, and all exports are bottled. We now turn to US imports. Imported whiskey has lost market share in both volume and value. Since 2020, tequila has been the clear winner, showing strong growth. However, a slight slowdown is evident in 2025. These charts illustrate the development of whiskey exports and imports up to 2025. The long-term trend since 2020 is clear: exports have increased, while imports have declined. This development is driven by multiple factors, including tariffs, inventory adjustments, destocking, the global economic and geopolitical environment, and changing consumer behavior. At the beginning of 2026, the global situation has shifted further, which is likely to have an impact on the whiskey market going forward. In a forthcoming presentation, exports of whiskey from markets other than Scotland and the United States will be analyzed. The focus will be on exports from hub countries, as well as developments in markets such as Ireland, India, and China. 3 countries stands for the main import to US, Canada, UK, and Ireland. The loser by volume is Canada, but the loser by value is UK. Thanks for watching.